Richard, my brother,
Lock,
how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Locked and loaded. So I'm excited about my first Instagram live activity here. Thanks for coaching me through it.
No worries. I'm super happy that the first one is going to be with me in this regard. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you about really how to control your financial well-being with infinite banking. But before diving into that, let me just give an introduction to my community about you. So Richard Canfield is a coach. He helps entrepreneurs take care of their financial well-being through something called infinite banking, which we're going to unpack in a very, very in-depth way in a few minutes over here. And for your community, Richard, my name is Christopher Dedeyan. I'm a professional speaker and a peak performance coach. So Richard, my brother, how are you going today?
Today's a fantastic day. Actually up early, which is not always my norm. I'm more of a late morning bird and kind of a late evening guy. But I'm up early. I'm excited. Today we're actually, as it literally started 3 minutes ago, effectively is our book launch today that we're doing for our brand new book on Kindle, which is a Canadian's Guide to Build Wealth Building Without Risk, the process of becoming your own banker. So I'm sure a lot of your audience is in the States. I have a lot of colleagues and friends that teach this concept of infinite banking down there as well. And we're just really excited. It's a great day and sun's shining. I mean, what's there not to be happy about? We're having a great conversation. It's a beautiful thing all the way around.
So first of all, Richard, congratulations on your book launch. We're going to dive into that in a few seconds. I'm actually from Canada as well. I do have a lot of my followers that are from the States and all around the world, as a big part of my business is kind of international in that regards. But I didn't know you're from Canada as well. Which part of Canada are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from the Edmonton, Alberta area, but
Okay.
about 2 years ago, I actually packed everything up, sold my acreage, and I moved my family lock, stock, and barrel over to Chilliwack, British Columbia, beautiful Chilliwack, which is about 90 minutes outside of Vancouver. And we couldn't be happier. It's fantastic. I can walk 2 minutes down the way here and I can jump into a beautiful river on a hot day, which is probably going to be later this afternoon to celebrate the book launch. And I'll just go and dunk in the river and cool myself down. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And it's nice to be a part of, being in the mountains is, it's a very like freeing and liberating place when you're kind of around that aspect. And proud Canadian, of course, but very excited about, all the relationships, as you mentioned, being an international guy, the relationships that you build and create when you get to be in a coaching realm and when you get to be working with and helping entrepreneurs, it's really amazing to see how relationships develop and what comes your way, but also how relationships get cultivated and where some of these overlapping experiences kind of land. I'm sure you've got some great stories about that and the many people you've met along the road of life.
100%, bro. You kind of got it spot on there. And man, it's so super cool that you're from BC. It's a beautiful place. 100% been there a couple of times. So yeah, definitely love that area. So let's really dive into the aspect of how you help people in regards to understanding their finances. How you gonna unpack the being your own bank with infinite banking, and at the same time, I just want to say, I heard of infinite banking several years back now from one of my good friends, Vinny, which I know he's listening to this. I see Christina on the live right now, and he caught me into it. And he's like, Chris, this is the way of the future. This is what you need to do. This is how successful people do their own banking. And you're actually, Richard, the third or fourth people I'm interviewing, or person, sorry, that I'm interviewing in this regards about infinite banking, but you're the first one on my Friday flow. I'm so excited to present this to my community on on Instagram. So please tell us a bit more about what is infinite banking, how can you utilize it for an entrepreneur, how is it good to be your own banker, what does that even mean, being your own bank in parentheses?
Yeah, super great question, and I'm glad that it's something that you're embracing and you've had other people connect you with this. And it's funny to say that this is the new and the wave of the future, but it's actually the way of the past. But it's being rejuvenated and reactivated to a degree so that people in a modern world, in a world where, I think for anyone that's watching, you might want to ask yourself the question: do you ever have the gut feeling that there's something fundamentally wrong in the financial world that we live in? And if that answer is true, well, then probability is you need to start thinking about how you're going to do something different, or how you're going to do something about it. And so my mentor, R. Nelson Nash, he's the gentleman who pioneered the infinite banking concept. He wrote this book called Becoming Your Own Banker. It's a best-selling book. It's self-published, and it sold over 500,000 copies worldwide. Well, this book came into my life in August of 2009, and it just changed everything for me. There's not a single aspect of my life, my personal relationships, every component of my life has been positively impacted by meeting Nelson, getting to know him, being able to be a student of his. and how he poured into me about not only his concept, but his, philosophies on life and how he looked at the world. And so really, the process of becoming your own banker is that it's a process. It's not a financial tool or a product that you get. It's a way that we think. It's a mindset about how money enters your life and flows out of your life. Right now, everyone watching this is their own banker. The problem is the component of banking that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. We've abdicated our responsibility to a third-party bank. Where you have your deposits, you get paid for your work, your business, whatever it is that you do. Money lands into a bank account. The moment it hits that bank account, that money is no longer yours. You have an IOU, a deposit slip that says you can access that money, you can get it on deposit, but technically it's now the custody of the bank. It's actually transferred to them. And they're able to use that money now, and they put speed and velocity, volume and velocity on that money for their shareholders, not for you. And then they charge you for basically you being the one lending them the money. You're technically lending your money to them in that instance. And a lot of people don't realize that. So you're already the banker in your life. You're just not taking control of the function of banking as it relates to your personal economy. So what we teach people how to do is how to slowly over time retain and bring that control back into their hands at the you and me level, so that you get to have more and more control over your lifelong cash flow, and then optimize it. We use a special vehicle. It's a specially designed whole life insurance contract that builds up a high amount of cash value. That cash value is an asset. Just like you've got a house and you build equity in a house, pay the mortgage down, maybe the house value goes up. That equity that's there, that's something that you can control, potentially tap into. The problem is you only can tap into that equity if you're dealing with someone else's rules. When you control your own banking system, you make the rules. You make the decisions on how you access capital, how you put it back, when you put it back. And meanwhile, your original money continues to grow uninterrupted throughout time. It's a very, very efficient way of operating your life. It's not about investing. It's not about, making a giant rate of return. It's about controlling the flow of capital. Once you control the flow of capital, all of the options, all the things you are already doing to spend your money, going on vacation, buying a computer, buying a car, buying rental real estate, buying Bitcoin, like buying stocks, whatever the thing is that, tickles your fancy, you're going to do all those things anyway. We just have to change the reservoir, the warehouse where you're accessing the capital from. And we're putting it into an efficient vehicle that has an uninterrupted motion on your money. And that's the key. That's where, people often don't understand opportunity cost. That's something that you would understand. Certainly a lot of the entrepreneurs listening will probably get it, because we think about opportunity cost as either deals or a decision about our business comes up. But when it comes to the opportunity cost on your day-to-day money, most people don't reckon with that. The reality is everything that we do financial in our life is making a decision to access money, someone else's big fat pile of money or our pile of money. When you access your pile of money, we draw it down to zero, and it can never earn for our life or the next generation or the next generation again. It's a multi-generational financial decision, but no one's taught us how to think that way. That's what Nelson did. He taught me and my colleagues and the authorized infinite banking practitioners how to think beyond our own lifespan. And we bring that coaching and that mindset, that thinking methodology into our conversations with clients and people all over North America. And so when you learn how to think and operate beyond your own lifespan, a lot of your decision-making process changes. And there's a way that you can have a dollar that you earn today be able to be utilized more than once throughout your lifespan and future generations. The only difference is your thinking and how you're optimizing the money. And that's really where the core of IBC comes in.
Okay, let's unpack a couple of things right here, because you kind of gave the overarching mindset about it. And, there's Vinny right here saying, that has really changed his life, infinite banking,
Hey, Vinny.
and so on. He got freedom from that. Okay, first and foremost, the concept that you explained, when you have a dollar or you have $10, take it like this, and you go bring it at the physical bank that's around your neighborhood, it's your local bank, they take that dollar and they have to only keep, if I'm not mistaken, 10 or 20%, and the rest, sorry, it's 10%. So they have to only keep $1 from that $10, and the rest of that $9, they could go invest it, give it to somebody else. So what that creates is hyperinflation. That's actually how money gets created in such a big way, especially now that we're in a case of we have fiat currency, which is a currency that's now backed by a tangible good, which back in the day, when Nixon took it out, it was backed by gold. Now it's not. So that's why there's a potential hyperinflation. So now that's the aspect of the bank. Now, you mentioned that you can be your own bank. So that means you take your own $10, you put it back into you. And we're going to explain in a second what we mean by this. And then from there, that other $9, you could go invest it somewhere else, but you still have your $10 in your own bank still going up. So what the bank is doing, you're going to do it for yourself. Now, I just kind of gave an analogy over here in the explanation, and tell me if I'm wrong or right in this regards. And then what is having your own bank? So what is that infinite banking? What is that entail to? Because it sounds great, but how do you be your own bank? So explain that for us, Richard.
Yeah, so you're on the right track. I mean, rather than getting all bent out of shape about numbers, it's more about the understanding conceptually what's happening. We're operating in this process in our life already. All we're doing is we're trying to change who is the person that ends up with all the money. Okay, I think it should be you, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think it should be you, well, then probability is you should start learning how that works. And that learning journey, in my opinion, always begins with Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I mean, if you want to get our book, that's great too. We talk about it, but Nelson's book is the core. Everything begins with what Nelson taught us to do. And, as an authorized practitioner of the Nelson Nash Institute, we're everything you mentioned about that concept of the bank using $9 of the 10, that's referred to as fractional reserve banking. And every country with a centralized bank, including Canada, is doing that type of activity. So people think that the central bank creates inflation, but that's not actually true. The central bank creates the capacity for it, but it's actually the commercial bank who is manufacturing that money. The problem is that money can't come into being unless, as a consumer, you and I and anyone watching this goes into a bank and we request money. If we're requesting money for a loan, for a mortgage, or for a credit card, or for a consolidation, or for any of these home renovation, whatever it is, a line of credit, you go to them and you ask to use their pile of money. They don't have any money. All of their money is ours. And that's when the money comes into being. When you sign the contract, it's just digits in a computer. And now the money that's there is actually a repayment stream that you've committed to. So that's where the money is transferring. And that's how the inflation really gets created. The money doesn't, the commercial bank just doesn't, print it themselves. The quote unquote printing aspect happens when we demand the money and the loan is created. So there's a promise of repayment in the future. And that's really a concern. Now, if you do your business, your quote unquote banking business, your needs for financing and your deposits. So we're talking about deposits and then financing requirements. If you change your deposits from a commercial banking sector into deposits into a high premium insurance contracts with a mutual insurance company, they're not owned by stockholders. They're owned by you and I. It's kind of like a co-op. You're a co-owner of the insurance company. By law, they have to share their profits with you. Insurance companies have been around a long time. They're pretty profitable. They have a demonstrated history of like 200 years of being exceptionally profitable. That seems like a good business to be a co-owner of. So the moment you become a participating co-owner in that business, as you're building up your capital pile and your capital resources are accumulating by making deposits, premium deposits, you have access to money from the life insurance company that you co-own. And they cannot fractionalize the money supply. They're not allowed. A dollar is a dollar, okay? Doesn't matter which currency denomination you're in. So if I build up a reservoir of capital and I want to access from some of the money, my money doesn't come out. My money continues to grow uninterrupted. Instead, I have access on demand to an equivalent amount of capital by using the insurance company's money. So they give me what's referred to as a policy loan. Often it can be direct deposit into your bank account somewhere between 3 and 10 business days, so pretty fast. Then I can go use that capital for the thing I was going to do anyway. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going to go and buy a car. Cars is a common thing because most people are driving on the road, okay? The US is a big place, Canada is a big place. Yeah, there's transit systems, but not if you're in a rural area. You need a car. So I'm going to go buy a car for 30 grand. Well, if I have 30 grand in my traditional bank account and I deplete that resource, that 30 grand can never earn a dollar for me for the rest of my life and my children's life. Whereas if I had infused that $30, let's say over 1 year or 2 or 3 years into my insurance contract, and now I take a policy loan from the life company, my 30,000 continues to grow every single day. Every day I take air into my lungs. It is an unstoppable force. I access 30,000 from a policy loan and I go pay cash for my car. Now, I have an outstanding loan to the insurance company. That needs to be repaid. Well, I'm going to need another car 5 or 6 years from now. Would you agree?
Yeah.
If I use my own cash resources and I depleted it to zero, Don't I have to save up the cash to buy the next vehicle 5 or 6 years from now in cash? I need
Absolutely.
to make a car payment. It's a savings payment, but it's a car payment nevertheless. In other words, car payments and things like these major purchases in life never end. So there's no difference if I increase my savings account or I repay the policy loan. I still get the money back. I can use the money again, and my insurance contract continues to grow because I never touched the actual original dollar. The original capital of mine is in an uninterrupted path. The only thing that can stop it is my mindset, me as the owner of that contract. If I decide to collapse it or close it down, which would be a really silly idea, or if I get taken out by a city bus and I'm no longer with us, if I graduate early, well then not only does it stop my contract, but a boatload of tax-free money pays out to my family, which is far greater than any amount of money I deposited. So it is a very efficient way of moving money throughout your life and harnessing the potential and the thinking around all of your future buying decisions. It's not an investment strategy. It is a cash flow management strategy. And when you optimize cash flow, what ends up happening is you build up a reservoir of capital. As you become well capitalized, something that my mentor Nelson Nash used to say is that opportunities, for those that are well capitalized, opportunities of high caliber track you down. In fact, they will hunt you down. So the more you increase your capital resources, the better quality of deal flow starts to find you. Deals are attracted to where the capital is. That's why the bank gets all the deals. They have all the capital. So if that's what's working for them, all we got to do is mirror and model what they do to our degree relative to our income and assets at our level. And we're just transitioning over time to independence. We're seceding from a system of a financial system and a banking system that is not designed to support you. And you're taking the control and the ownership back at the you and me level. That's the power. And when we do that, the fractional reserve issue that you kind of mentioned, Chris, we're becoming part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Our deposits no longer in the commercial bank. They can't fractionalize our money. Our banking business, our need for financing, which could be continued throughout the rest of your life, is changing from where we're getting the capital. We're working with the insurance company now, and we co-own the lender. Anytime I take a policy loan, I co-own the lender. Yeah, I'm going to pay interest to them, but they also share all the profits with me. That's a beautiful way of doing business. And when you understand Nelson's concepts and his mindsets, this goes beyond an insurance contract. It's not about the insurance. It's all about this. Because the only thing that makes or breaks whether this works for you in your life is how you think. It's all about how you think.
Okay. So, Richard, that was an amazing rant over there in regards to everything you just mentioned. I'm going to do my best to unpack and just clarify certain things that I understood, make this going to resonate with some of our listeners. First of all, Michael is saying this information is gold, and it is. So, Richard, you're really hitting that out of the park in that regards. So, we talked about fractional banking, right? Like we said, we put $10, the bank keeps $9. Now, to become your own bank, you get a insurance. Now, that insurance, just like you mentioned, Richard, let's say you get an insurance for $30,000, which was the example that you gave because you want to buy out a car. Now, from that insurance, if I have $30,000 that I have access to, that's under my name with your insurance, and compared to I have $30,000 in a bank account, when I pull out that money from the bank account, that money is depleted, it's no longer there. So the $30,000 in the bank account, imagine you have it in some sort of investment, there's no percentage going up, the money's out, right? So the investment stops. In this regards, the fact that we're calling it your own bank is you're pulling out that $30,000 from the insurance, but the insurance is still seeing a $30,000 insurance. So if you have it invested in X, Y, and Z, even though it's pulled out with interest, obviously, it's still seeing it that there's $30,000 there. So it's still increasing if you have it invested. But then you have that $30,000 capital, and you could invest it in a car, in a real estate deal, in another opportunity. So this is where the big difference comes about, what I understand, into infinite banking and traditional banking. Essentially, it's kind of the same analogy that you gave of, let's say you have a property, you don't have a mortgage on it anymore, or you have a capital gain on your mortgage and you want to pull out and put a second mortgage or whatever the case because you need $50,000. That $50,000 that you put out, it doesn't mean that your property's value drops to $50,000. No. Your property value is still the same and still increasing through year, depending on what's happening to the market, but you have access to that $50,000. So essentially what we're creating is that same lever effect with the real estate property in this regards. Am I correct with saying that, Richard? Is that a good way of explaining it?
It's the power of collateralization. Everything you mentioned about the real estate thing is correct. The different, because people understand real estate, so that's where we can start our brain connecting to that level. You want to get a home equity line of credit or whatever, or a second mortgage, something, you can access equity that you've built up in the house. Equity in a housing market is created in two ways: the repayments on a loan, and then the market providing it to you. So this is at this point, this is where infinite banking differs. When we're working with the insurance contract, because it is a contract, what you have is forced appreciation. The insurance company is contractually obligated, when you design a well-structured whole life insurance contract, that it must accumulate the cash value, which is like the equity. So cash value and equity in a house are about the same idea. And as that cash value asset builds, it's actually growing to chase the death benefit. So if, as an example, if I have $1 million policy, and day one I start and I fund some money in there, and the cash value is only 30 grand. Well, by the time I reach age 100 in Canada and age 121 in the United States, we operate on different lifespans. The insurance company is contractually obligated to grow that cash to equal that death benefit. I, as the contract only, have to fulfill one obligation, and that's to make sure I make the minimum premium payment. But there's also a flexible premium payment we refer to as a paid up additions rider. So these can be designed very flexibly, where you have a lot of control. Because I don't know about you, Chris, but income isn't the same every year for people. Some people, they got a regular paycheck, and a lot of business owners don't. Sometimes you might have really good months and then really bad months. So you need to have a little bit of flexibility on how cash flow runs through your life. IBC is designed very well for that. Again, you need to work with an appropriate coach to understand how that works, and they need to understand your circumstances. But this is the key fundamental. This is a contract. So unlike, an investment vehicle or the real estate market, which right now in Canada, the real estate market is, going to be correcting. There's some correcting taking place. They're saying 25% drops in several markets. Well, those aren't really drops. Those are a reset to normality, okay, because it's overinflated. So it's going to be coming back to a level of like normalcy. Well, you don't control the real estate market. You don't control the Federal Reserve and how they make interest rate adjustments. You don't control whatever the federal government is doing and how they're, you don't control any of those kind of activities. We can't control what's going on in other countries, presidential elections. None of these things are under our control as human beings. What is under our control is how we think and what we choose to do. If you do your business with an insurance company, you have one of these contracts, you've put them on notice. They are contractually obligated to grow cash values each and every day that you take air into your lungs until age 100, in Canada, age 121. It never sleeps. So this whole idea is about making sure that your money is always in motion and always protected. So versus, in the last couple of months, we've seen a pretty big dip in the stock market. I'm sure some people have experienced that. You've heard it in your 401k, your RSPs and Roths and all these different financial vehicles. You didn't control any of it. All you can control is your decisions on whether you sell or whether you buy. So in the insurance contract, that is no longer a requirement, because we have a contract and the insurance company must perform to that contract. They are contractually obligated to grow your cash value. And when you design these things well and you fund them appropriately, because this all rests on your shoulders as a policy owner, when you fund it appropriately with good deposits, what we end up doing is leapfrogging that death benefit higher and higher and higher and higher each and every year. So we're forcing an increasing level of cash accumulation. I refer to it like this way. Maybe people are familiar with the game Follow the Leader, right? Or you used to play tag as a kid. You'd run around, the schoolyard, and we'd play tag and you try to slap somebody on the back. Well, this is like the game of tag, except the cash value is it, and it's chasing the death benefit. And at age 100 in Canada, age 120 in the States, it's going to slap that sucker on the back and saying, boom, I got you, right? So that cash is in constant motion. It's always chasing and chasing and chasing after the death benefit. And the more we leapfrog that thing up, the faster the cash has got to grow. Every time that cash grows, an amount of that equity is instantly available to you as the owner of the contract who's in all the control. You can request on demand a policy loan from the life company, because you have the first right of refusal to access whatever value could be lent out of your policy. The insurance company's got to put the money to work anyway. They're required to. They have to put it to work. And who are they putting it to work for? Everyone that's a par policy owner. They're putting it to work for all of us. If you own one and I own one and we're in the same company, and I own it on my kids and my wife, and you own it on your kids and your wife, we're all mutually connected by free contract, voluntary free contract. This insurance company, which has a 200-year history of demonstrated performance, really good performance, they're obligated to grow this money for everyone to meet their obligations and for the people that are co-owners. And so they have to put the money to work. They can put it to work in lending on mortgages and joint ventures and buying bonds and these other things, or they can put it to work with me and with you. Of all the people in that chain of who they could put the money to work for, we have the first right of access. It's total and absolute control.
I mean, that is crazy, just the way they kind of broke it down and what are the levers that you can utilize this tool for your advantage. And this is all great. Now, I have a question for, let's say, startup entrepreneur or somebody that doesn't necessarily have the funds right now to potentially invest. Now, is this still something that they can do? Or it's kind of like the same concept as going to a bank and asking for a loan. To do so, they're going to look at your numbers, you're going to look at your income. Like you said, some entrepreneurs go up and down, especially if they're in the beginning of it. What do you need to have? Where do you need to be within your journey as in your finances or as an entrepreneur to be able to access this infinite banking and start banking through these insurance policies?
Yeah, I mean, really, really super good question. I think the first thing that is you need positive cash flow. If you spend more than you make, you're going to have a tough time doing this. So the type of coaching that you need is a different kind of coaching. We got to figure out how we solve that problem. And once we can solve that problem, and it may be that you have money flowing through your hands that's inefficient. And if we can tweak the inefficiencies, we might be able to create that positive cash flow. Okay. So being able to have more money left over at the end of the month or the end of the year than what you've spent is a criteria. All right. Mm-hmm. Or a combination of assets. So if we have a combination of these two things, we can look at saying, hey, here's an existing asset or asset base. And 401k or an RSP or in this or in that or in this or some, whatever I've got. Like I've got a guy who's got like $1.5 million worth of cars. He doesn't put money into government plans. He puts money, he works at an auto dealership. He puts money into cars. So he's got like investment grade cars. He could sell a car tomorrow for 25 grand and boom, shove that into a policy. He has deal flow for new cars. He can borrow, let's say 20 grand right back out a couple of days later, give or take, and he could go and buy another car. Right? So he can control that because he knows his marketplace. So this is just like one idea how we might be able to reposition existing assets and start to flow some of that through the program where then you go and you repurchase assets or a different kind. So like real estate investors, sometimes they get, we call them dogs in your portfolio. And every once in a while, you got to get rid of the dogs in your portfolio. So if you can exit a deal and you're like, hey, I want to get rid of that thing, bad tenant profile, bad neighborhood, it's time to get out. Hey, I got some capital, cool. Let's try to shove some of that in, maybe over a 1, 2, or 3 year period. And then meanwhile, I'm hunting for the next deal to fill my portfolio back up again. So there's many ways of accomplishing it, but a key criteria is either assets in place that we can work with or positive cash flow. And for most people, it really boils down to positive cash flow.
Okay, so that's really clear. So you have to have a positive cash flow, like you mentioned, at the end of the year, the month, whatever. You have to have some capital in that regard, or like you said, you have to have other goods like a property, like a car, anything that you could kind of leverage in that regard. That makes sense. Richard, so I want to be respectful for your time here, and I feel like we could talk about this until tomorrow morning, but I do want to highlight a bit more. You mentioned it in the beginning of the conversation here, the book that just came out, your book. I want to just take some time to highlight that. Tell me a bit more about the book. Where can people reach out to you if they're interested within this? If they're like, you know what, this is interesting, but I want to know more. Where's the best place to contact you? Talk to me a bit about that aspect as well.
Yeah, super great question. Thanks for that. So, I mean, the book is Canadian's Guide to Wealth Building Without Risk. It's the process of becoming your own banker. So we do go through a couple examples here, but it's really focused on understanding the highlights. There's a few client stories in there as well. And this book, it's not a long read. There's a couple of images, like drawings that we've had done in there to help display concepts because people are very visual. And right now, literally right now, for the next 2.5 hours, that book is available for 99 cents on Amazon. So you can go to amazon.com or .ca and you can search for Canadian's Guide to Wealth Building Without Risk. And it's available right there. That's a limited time because we're doing our our launch basically today for the Kindle version. The paperback is also available. actually right now. And we're actually working on book 2. Book 2 is going to be Cash Follows a Leader. So we're going to talk about that contract of reaching that age 100. And we've got, again, drawings and visualizations that are going to explain how that works, these paid up additions, and understanding the core concepts of the foundation of the contract. That's hopefully coming out in December. But as far as learning more about this process, we do produce a ton of content like you yourself do. Our podcast, Wealth Without Bay Street, is a great resource. And in fact, what I would encourage people to do, it's nice and simple and easy to remember. You can head over to 7 Steps. That's 7steps.ca. And we have an amazing free report that's right there. It literally walks through 7. There's actually a couple bonus steps of exactly the learning journey that we recommend people take to truly start to understand this concept in their life. And then it costs you nothing to learn, of course. It's just your time. It's an investment in your time. And for most people, it's going to take a couple of good hours. You probably need at least 3 to 4 hours just of unpacking this and some rethinking in your life, watching Nelson's documentary film, reading his book. And then you can decide, yeah, this is something I'd like to do, but your learning journey is not over. You're actually just beginning. So, I'm entering my 14th year of this journey, and I'm very blessed by it. I started with my very first policy of $4,200 a year. Now I'm at a point where we're doing over $150,000 a year into our system. Okay, I just got 3 new policies on my family, my wife, and my 2 kids in the last 4 months, and I'm always looking for a way to get another one. My business partner Jason and the co-author of our book, amazing guy. He's got 4 kids, and each of his kids have like 4 policies. So he's got like 69 policies in his family system. He's even got one on my life. And Nelson, I wanted to share this with us just to think this through a little bit for the power of what this is. Nelson, my mentor, I loved him dearly. He was the most incredible human being I ever met in my life. And he passed at age 88. He would say 88 revolutions around the sun. When Nelson left us and he graduated, he was still making phone calls to people right from the bed in the hospital. Okay, that's the kind of guy he was. And when Nelson passed, there were 17 tax-free death benefit checks that paid out to his family. But that's not the really cool part. The really cool part is this: there are 28 assets. Just like think about you owned 17 properties and another 28 properties. You sold 17 at death, and there's still 28 properties left when you were gone for the family. That's basically what he did, except those 28 properties are insurance contracts. And they're continuing to grow and produce cash value every single day since Nelson passed away, coming up on 3 years. Well, actually, it was coming up on 4 years. And that is powerful. And that means there will be 28 new tax-free death benefits paid out throughout the course of time that Nelson started in his lifespan. He has created a multi-generational banking system that supports his family as long as they maintain the right thinking. The only thing that can destroy it is their thinking. And there's this expression, rags to rags in 3 generations. Mm-hmm. The way that we stop that is by people listening to your show, by people getting into Friday Flow, by people paying attention to good coaching, by changing the way that we think, and by spending the time to get educated on things that could make a massive difference in our life.
Richard, you just dropped so much gold in this recording right here. Guys, please go back and re-listen to it. If you have any questions, please comment. Me and Richard will definitely answer that. This is going to be 1 week from now on my YouTube channel as well, so it's always going to be there. So if you guys want to re-listen to it, you guys could go check it out there. As well, Richard, you said it's the 7steps.ca. Was that the...
That's right. 7steps.ca. So the number 7steps.ca, or the word 7, they both go to the same place.
Okay.
Again, free report to go ahead and download it there. And we walk you through everything that you need to do to really learn about this process.
Perfect. So I'll put that in the show notes as well, so you guys will be able to go check that out. Richard, once again, my brother, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. Keep up your phenomenal work, because I know that you're helping so many people. This is very enlightening for me as well. As my community, I know Vinny is going to kind of be on my back to get this ball rolling, and I will start that very soon as well on my end, because like I said, you're the 4th person that I talked about this recently, and I'm like, all right, cool, we need to do this for my business in itself. So thank you very much. We'll be keeping in touch, and keep up the phenomenal work, brother.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks, everybody.